Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for our third episode of the Joint Cycling Masterclass series. Today, we're talking about how to go faster on the bike. That includes aerodynamics, equipment, but also, as I learned in the episode, your physiology as a cyclist. And we've got none other to speak to us about it than Jonny Wale. He was formerly Chief Morale Officer at Hoob Wattbike, but actually was a key component of that successful trade track team. He's been involved in numerous successful hour records. In fact, he's recently co-authored a paper doing a case study of a world hour record simulation. He's worked at the INEOS Grenadiers, and now he is the technical performance manager at Red Bull BORA hansgrohe. It's really cool to speak to him in person just before I came back to Australia, and we get into what do aerodynamics mean? Are they even relevant for you as an amateur cyclist? Should you even care about them? But not just what different equipment you can put on your bike, but how to train aerodynamics, how to test aerodynamics as an amateur. Are they even trainable for you? But also we get into what he does in his role in professional cycling, trying to make riders go faster, and it's a lot broader than you may think. So really interesting interview. Thanks to Jonny for coming on. I hope you all enjoy it. Here later on a Sunday night with Jonny Wale. He's been at INEOS. He's now going to Red Bull BORA hansgrohe. He's a self-professed aerodynamics expert. That's not true. That's actually what I said to him when I was trying to convince him to do this interview for all of you about aerodynamics, how it relates to your cycling, what everyone's doing at the professional level. It's something I'm interested in and have zero insight into as someone who couldn't really do maths at school, let alone university. Knowing how people actually go faster on the bike is something I'm interested in and would like to learn more about. So that's why I brought Jonny here into my home. Actually, I didn't realize he lived down the street, relatively speaking, in Andorra. He actually, what did you do to me this morning? Would you say I brought the morale this morning?
Well, we know that you don't know anything about aerodynamics, judging by your setup this morning. Nice round tubes, wide bars.
I mean, I averaged like 20 k's an hour, so I'm not sure. Well, that's maybe something to just doesn't matter at 20 k's an hour. But yeah, for context, we went for a ride this morning. I was told to bring morale and carbohydrates. I brought neither really. I was just whinging the whole time, and then I think Jonny was trying to get me a bit tired so I wouldn't ask any difficult questions. But could you explain to everyone what your background is briefly, I guess, pre-pro cycling, and then what you've been doing at INEOS, and then what you will be doing at Red Bull BORA hansgrohe?
Okay. Long story. I've had a bit of a diverse background to come in. So I did uni, dropped out originally, went and worked in fine dining, Michelin star restaurant for 4.5 years. Went back to university, did psychology for 4 years, did a master's in clinical psychology. Started cycling in a track team. My friend Dan Bingham just randomly wanted to start a team pursuit team, and he needed 4 friends, and he's only got 4 friends, so that's why I got drawn into it. And then from there it kind of grew, and that's when my involvement in cycling, if you will, really started. I'd always ridden bikes, because bikes are cool. But it kind of kicked off at that point, and we had this small little band of 4 guys, and we needed to go to World Cups and break down the world, and you had to learn, Dan was leading the aero side, and then I would lead the the physiology side and the training side. What the fuck do we do, Yeah. So it's sink or swim time, which is basically how we've kind of got here, and our approach has always kind of been the same. None of us have really had formal training in cycling, and we've not done been as a junior and grown up and been indoctrinated in cycling. So we kind of came from right on the outside, came into cycling, and that's basically it's all. I know it sounds really boring, but it just snowballed from there. And then I guess my kind of involvement in pro cycling and INEOS was through the hour records of Dan and Filippo. So obviously INEOS supported Dan originally as part of the development plan to get Filippo it eventually. Yeah. And then did a good job with Dan, got asked to help out with Filippo. Did okay with that. Job opened up. They like what I did there, just kind of a bit diverse of I'm not really an expert in any field, if you will, but I've got a good understanding of multiple different disciplines. can communicate it nicely.
But multiple disciplines, but what do you mean by that? Because that's the track. But were you also doing TTs yourself on the road? Or you mean like more that you did swimming before? What do you mean by multiple disciplines?
Yeah, like all of the above, it's like we had to do everything. I know it's track cycling and like, but it is the most pure form of a lot of optimization. It's like, I think sometimes the road race problem is so big that you get washed out and you can't go to it. Whereas, they'll be like, oh, that doesn't work in a bunch, or, all these sort of things rule out innovation, because you can't actually like quantify it really well at the moment. But in track you can, it's super easy, super controlled. So what you eat, how you approach it, your warm up, your psychology around it, how you train, how you taper, how you build in, like even like basic performance logistics, like how did you fly to the race? How did you get from the airport to the event? And all these things, it's like that whole like holistic bubble of performance. We kind of had to all be, I don't want to say masters of it, but we had to learn on our feet and get it done. So it's not as if I did, like, if you look at, say, like a lot of like, take a nutritionist, generally done a 3 years uni, done a master's, maybe done a PhD, nutrition. It's very like one dimensional. And maybe they've done a few different sports here and there, but it's all very plain. It's you're one track, and you don't really, you don't have that psychology background. You don't have like the coaching side. Like whereas for me, because we didn't have that, that's what I mean by like broad spectrum.
Yeah, right. Okay. So you're not just literally a guy with an iPad and a computer being like, well, maybe you do that as well, but saying this equation means you will go faster if you change this position. Your like background is much broader than that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then at INEOS, sorry, I cut you off. At INEOS, you then, after the hour record, got hired, and that was, what was that to do?
So that was originally to sort of support around the TT optimization projects. Okay. So it was, the idea was that, so me and Dan have always had this little dynamic duo, whatever you want to call it. So that Dan's very much like analytical. He's very good at like the process side of it. If you imagine your like performance pathway, it's where it's like performance is on the left and then your development capability is on the right. So Dan is very good on the right of getting better at getting better. Okay. Whereas I'm very good on the left of performance and optimizing the performance on the day, if you will. And like, if you just focus on the left, you get better tomorrow, but a year, 2 years later, you're worse. Whereas if you just focus on the right, you miss out the basic, low hanging fruit on the left. So like together and I both, we kind of complement each other quite well on that side. And that was like the original plan of how it was going to come with INEOS. It was, I'd be a lot more hands-on on the race. In training with the riders in Andorra, they were going to make a big training base here. So it would be, they relocated me here where I could be with the riders day in, day out, see them, feel them, touch them. It's that hands-on.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it coaching, but it's like, I think like historically within cycling, we are bad at coaching. I think there's a lot of trainers, it's training prescription, that side of it we're really good at. But like that basic like coach's eye, how do you make someone better? Like swimming coaches or like gymnastics coaches, like these guys have like the eye and they can tweak your technique. Like try this, try that.
Well, that's all swimming is. Swimming is technique. It's a technical sport, and of course there's a physiology part of it as well. But yeah, like swimmers, Visma just brought in Jakob Vahara, and then we went for we went to NL and went to the Eindhoven, like the main swimming facilities there, and like the way that they're getting athletes to do like they just do starts practice, and then use video to analyze their technique. Whereas in cycling, I don't know how maybe other teams are doing it, but it doesn't get spoken about that much. But just even analyzing, I don't know, just how even sprinters' positions, which is like a very basic thing that Ewan was looking at himself, but how sprinters' positions are changing. Did they lose the race because for X, Y, Z? Because it can get caught up in the race dynamics. I lost the sprint because he chopped me. Or so is that what you mean by like coaching as well? You're like looking, okay, this guy's going to go out and do TT training today down to Marseille or something. You'll go with him and you actually look, okay, he had his wind tunnel position. That's fantastic. This is how it actually looks after an hour and a half.
No, literally that, exactly that. Okay. It's once you've been in part of that like full development pathway, exactly what they did on the track. You can see what they've done and how they're doing it on the road. And it's basic where if you're right, literally sat there riding with the bike with them in their environment. You can sit on their wheel when they're doing their efforts. You can just scoot along past, do this, do that. You go back. It's that instantaneous cue. And a lot of these things I don't think you can see truly in the car. Just following. It's by being like in their environment, you can do it a lot better. You get a lot more buy-in, a lot more belief. It's that was the element that Rod originally wanted to bring into the team. It was because, like you say, like swimming, they do it really well. It's this big part of cycling. Like we all know that cornering is important. We all know pacing is important. We all know like positions are important, but there's not actually a lot of work done on that.
Yeah.
And it is the future of cycling. There's only so much watts per kilo you can tap out of people. But if you can make someone...
They gained a lot this year.
You know what?
They went a lot faster this year.
Yeah. But where's that coming from? Is that from horsepower? Is that coming from better nutrition? Is that coming from better cornering, better tires, wheels, skin suit? It's in general, like, just look at cycling as energy. Don't look at power. Just look at energy.
Yeah.
And then you got energy in, power, energy out, aerodynamics, rolling resistance. But then how do you support the in? It's with nutrition. How do you, it's all of these different things. It's, it doesn't matter how you make them faster. You just need to make them faster. And it's that unit of energy that you can do. And if we can make them 1%, 2%, 3% better at cornering, we're good,
Yeah. Well, that's what even today. So I've been riding with, not to toot my own horn because it's on their rest days, but yeah, like I've been riding with my friends here who are obviously all pros for like 3 years. And then I've had a couple of big crashes. My descending confidence is gone. And then on the descents, I'll fall them, whatever. And they know, like, if I go with Jack, like, he knows I'm rat shit downhill. But then, yeah, I told Jonny, and then Jonny today is like, you immediately went into like almost coach mode. And you gave me like a mental cue, just like one thing to do. And immediately my like comfort in the corners was 10 times better. I don't know if I went faster, probably didn't. That wasn't the goal, but like my comfort and feeling of stability was 10 times better. And that's like, yeah, you're right. To think that if you're not with them on the bike and you're in the car, you can't give a cue. You can't give a cue every corner. And then if you can't assume that other pros are going to give that cue either, because they don't have the mentality of a coach.
I don't think they know how to do it as well, because they're good at it.
Yeah.
They don't think about why they have to do it.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. Yeah, it's probably an unconscious reflex. And hopefully it wasn't rude, but
no, I was grateful.
I wanted to get down the mountain, bloody. I haven't got all day. It was an interview to do.
Exactly. No, it was good. I was grateful for you. So, and then at Red Bull, is it much of the same, largely?
Yeah. So it's the Red Bull project is an exciting one because it's kind of starting from fresh. They've have very little past experience of doing this aero work in general and optimization. They've kind of been, they've had people working in the team, sort of like there'll be a mechanic who also does the aero testing, and
right.
The DSs will do a bit, the coaches will do a bit. They've never had like a set department, if you will. So that's why it's kind of an exciting project, and like the ability to work closely with Red Bull Advanced Technologies as well. It's, they've got a lot of nice sponsors, nice investment with long-term planning. So for us, it's kind of a child's playground. We can set the agenda. There's no, this is what we did in the past. We can go in fresh and hopefully set something up pretty exciting.
So with going faster, what is like the lowest hanging fruit for not say Primoz Roglic or someone who's that's going to be who you're working with, who's already had a lot of time and work put into him. So there's something, you're going to find something, but you're not going to find probably 20%. What's the lowest hanging fruit for, or even how should an amateur be looking at it when they're like, I want to go faster beyond just pushing more power? How should they first start thinking about it? What's the first step they should take?
Yeah, I guess it depends what they're trying to accomplish. If it's like the demands of the event, what they're trying to do. If they're racing, if it's 200-mile race is different to if it's a local 10K TT,
Yeah.
But I think generally aerodynamics is just underestimated across the board in any spectrum of the sport. But it's yeah, the amateurs is a hard one. I don't know if I'd be the best at coaching the amateurs, but like basic things like clothing. What are you wearing? You know, like I think Aero socks should be rebranded as socks. You know, little clothing apparel is a easy low hanging fruit you can pop on. Like when you get more expensive bikes, bike positions, actual like road bike aero testing is probably not necessary for that amateur level. There's a lot of copy and paste that you can do,
Right.
and the principles will apply. And then just actually focusing on getting better at it. You know, like it's not just practice; it's focused practice. You know, it's maybe you ignore the physiological training side. Like go back to the start. The watts per kilo stuff we're really good at. Training prescription we're really good at. But the how did you train towards your race? You know, if you're going to do all your efforts up a climb and then you're going to race on the flat at 50k an hour, you're never going to be able to hold that position well because you've not experienced it in training.
So are aerodynamics trainable, like as part of your overall physiology? That was one of my questions as well.
Just like positional, yeah. It's funny because there's everyone has an example of someone that it hasn't worked with, you know. And we had a guy in our track team originally. You couldn't make him better. And it doesn't matter what position you put him in, he just wouldn't. He's just a non-responder to aero. But then, like, you also have people like Dan, who's like I think probably the poster child of what you can do. You know, and he's consistently year after year got slightly better. Whether it's big positional changes, equipment, it's the full package, you know. And as you get further down that optimization funnel, you know, all you do is you just add another zero on your CDA number that you're looking for. And like, you know, you get more repeatable, better at testing means you can be more precise within tests, which means you can learn more.
Yeah.
Like the more error you get instantly, the more test runs you can do because you're not having to ride at threshold to do 50k an hour. You can ride at, you know, just high endurance zone, you know? So then you can go from like, I think Dan, again, Dan's the example. Like when he started, it was 40k of aero testing. At the end, you would do 3-4 days back to back of 150k on the track. It's all day, every day because he's so good at it, and you know you can start learning more. I think that's literally the case with aero and that side. The more you can do, the more you'll learn. And I always wanted to do this like a study where you would just aero test people on the track and not change anything. So it's like today's session, we're going to do 10 runs of 2.5k, and we're not going to change anything. The start to finish, you'll get more aero. Across every session, 100%, you'll get more aero and more stable at it. And then, like maybe you do like a race at the start, race at the end, and your like stability of aerodynamics would get better because you're consciously doing a focused period where you're trying to remain stable, consistent, smooth. You know, we don't do that in normal training. And this is, like you say, go back to the swimming example. This is what other sports do. But for whatever reason, cycling's, even though it's such a big force, we don't put the time, effort, resource into doing it.
So say you are a competitive amateur and like you said, it depends on your discipline. So 10K TT, you should then think, what are the specific demands of this event? Mm-hmm. I'm going to try go at 50K an hour, let's say. Would you say your remit is also, say the athletes have a criterion. It's even you're working or thinking beyond just, I'm going to put this guy in narrower bars and turn his levers in and he's going to go quicker. It's also, you're saying if you have a crit coming up, you need to be doing once a week, like 4 cones cornering practice in a car park, like focused as just an example, with like good technique or changing the technique or trying different techniques in the corners. So is that what you mean by like focused non-physiology training?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's kind of reflected in my job title at Red Bull, is that it's technical performance manager. It's not aerodynamicist, you know? It's we don't care where the improvement comes from. It's these are the windows, the aero, the cornering, the braking, it's everything. You know, if you can be more efficient braking, it's a big win. It's like how many, you know, if you've got a guy that can't corner, likely it's probably because they're not setting up well. Like, how are you braking? So then you just, part of the role is then you then put things in place to upskill that. So it's come in 50k an hour, slam your brakes on as hard as you can. How quickly can you stop? Do that 10 times. You will stop faster and you'll be more consistent and comfortable doing that. Then you start cornering. You know, it's not just like you say, you got to do the other homework as well.
Yeah. So could you run me through like your process for doing that? Maybe you don't have one. Are you more like a loose, just like, as you said, you're on the perform tomorrow side of things. But yeah, what would your process be for, say, event in 12 weeks, 16 weeks with an athlete, from maybe a start to finish, just like a broader overview of how that would look?
Well, I think the bad answer to this is that I would open up that time window.
Okay.
So I think people that have a bad reputation of aero and they think it doesn't work and I didn't adapt to it. You just didn't do it for long enough. You know,
Okay.
I think a lot of aero testing and like on that side of it, you think you should test and try and find positions not only to ride in 12 weeks, but to ride in 4 years, 6 years. I think especially in like the pro world where it's like, if you're signing a guy to your team for 5 years, let's work on his position in 5 years' time, and then it's you elongate that journey, if you will, and you're never going to do it overnight. You know, you're going to find small incremental improvements every year, but if you don't have that sort of end goal of where you want to go to, and like a number of times we would do aero tests, and like you know, Dan would pull up after like 7 laps and it's like, I can't ride this. It's fucking impossible. But then you go back to the drawing board of like, right, let's put some training pieces in place in that position and go back and test it in 2 months' time. How can you hold it now? Maybe. It's that time window that you've really got to open up, I think.
Right.
Because it's just hard, you know. Because I think you can adapt to anything if you give it enough time. You know, from a aerodynamic point of view, there's obviously limitations of like in the World Tour of how much time they'll actually give. You know, like
it depends on like for who's listening to this, they're going to invest in themselves, and so that's fine. But you're right, like if a guy's on a 2.5 year Neo Pro contract, and he's like could be good, could be going back to university if it doesn't work out, then yeah, that's a very different to if you sign Paul Seichas at Decathlon. He's clearly like the next big French GC hope. You're saying first year World Tour next year, like there should be a core focus of how he just looks on a road bike or is riding his road bike, not just TT bike, in 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you'll have personal development plans for their physiology and race programs, and it should be the same from the technical side. And it's the problems we have at the moment within the World Tour is that we can't quantify all of these things to the level we need. This is why like we would push to like basic one of raise the weight of the bikes. You know, make every bike, say, I don't know, 8 kilos, and then use that weight to add sensors, accelerometers, everything to the bike, like, and have advanced telemetry, similar to like how you'd have in Formula One. And you can just open up this world of analysis for the riders. Be a lot safer as well, because if you'd have accountability of what people are doing, you know, like if you're riding recklessly, you'll see it in the data.
Yeah, right.
Like, put a camera on the front of everyone's bikes. You know, people's behavior will change very fast. Like you just got to look at rugby versus football. You know, with the radio on the refs. You know, like people aren't stupid.
Yeah.
This is where we're kind of like at this like juxtapoint in the sport where we can, the next 10 years, this is likely what it could look like, but it's whether we'll have capacity to go that, because it's always going to come at a weight cost if you want to start putting these things on. Whether it's yeah, who's going to be willing to make that jump first?
Well, It would have you mandated from the UCI that you would have to have a camera on every bike, and then the teams would probably also then say, why then is the data for internal use? So that accelerometer data you mentioned, is that internal use to train your own riders? Is it going to be publicly available? But then if you want to see, did someone just come into this corner at 50 k's an hour when you could see a crash was ahead of him? Then from a safety perspective, the UCI would probably want to see that data. But then do the teams want the UCI having that data? Because there's already been a fight about, there was Velon, so who owns the rider's power data or heart rate data? The bike weights are not going to go up. I've heard that one before. I just can't see it.
Yeah.
Mainly because I feel like the manufacturers, well, the bike weight wouldn't have to go up. The bike weight limit goes up. So yeah, the bikes can all stay the same, but you then are saying that really what you're saying is the UCI needs to mandate that all this extra stuff goes on the bike. But but then the bike weight would have to have a minimum. The counter to that would be that they couldn't just make the bikes now 5 kilos and then put 1.8 kgs of stuff on the bike.
Yeah. I mean, people are still doing that now, They're still putting lead weights in the bottom of road bikes. It's how you use that weight, it's up to you. But there's as soon as we can measure it accurately, repeatably, that's when you can start opening up this, call it skill, technical side of the sport.
Yeah.
But you can do it in training. At the moment, there's the...
Wait, so there's accelerometers you can already use in training?
Yes.
But you don't have to say the brand. I don't. This is not my area of expertise, so I don't know.
There's projects that are being done at the moment, so watch this space. It's
more reliable than a Garmin or Wahoo head unit. With how you,
if it's like you're getting 1 hertz from a Garmin, so it's next to pointless, really.
So do you? I guess the whole premise of this conversation is that I think that amateurs, or at least definitely competitive amateurs, should care about aerodynamics. But what would you say first of all, how much should they care about it? Like, if you say you have you use something like Join, Join like a adaptive training platform, use that for your coaching. So you have a real coach. So you don't have a coach at all, but you spend a lot of your time on Golden Cheetah like I used to, looking at my training. If you're at that level, do you think you would be stupid not to be focusing somewhat on your aerodynamic optimization if you're down that level of enthusiast?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I find it hard that it's not focused on more, It's I think it's difficult in terms of you can feel how heavy a bike weighs. If you put a lightweight set of wheels on, you accelerate out of a traffic light. You feel that it's there, but you can't feel a 3% drop in aero until you ride next to someone on a round tubed bike with wide bars and stuff, and you see how fast you're going down the descents because you're just not freewheeling.
I was also my front derailleur battery died. So.
This is cycling, The excuses always come out.
And so that you bring up the bikes is an interesting point. That was one of my big questions. Should that hypothetical amateur that I just said to you, they can only buy one bike, they're not mega rich. Should that bike, they don't live where we live in Andorra, they live in a normal place. Should that bike be an aero bike? Should it be like a Van Rysel Tarmac Colnago V3 RS all-rounder bike, or what would you think?
It depends if you're racing, 100% aero. If you're just if you're going out to ride casually, socially, then I would go more down the comfort route. But 100% if you're paying to put a number on your back and you're not considering aero, you're missing out.
And so and what would be the ranking of like ROI on the various things? So like socks is what, 50 quid for aero socks? Less
than that.
So that's like biggest ROI.
No-brainer. Yeah.
Socks, helmet. Are there aero sunglasses yet?
There is that like that.
There's the Groenewegen, the death, like the plague.
I know what you mean,
nose piece. Yeah, and then clothing, obviously. Bike is the big one because you can get aero socks, as you said, for less than 35 euros or whatever. It's hard to go out and replace your 15,000 euro climbing bike or even 3,000 euro climbing bike with what would then be the next things you'd be looking at. So you can't replace your bike. Is it, because I've always been like, well, you just mentioned my bars. Surely if I just put 38s on, like, is that one size fits all? If I just put 38s on, 99% chance I will be more aerodynamic. Doesn't matter what my shoulder width, training history, weird leg length measurements, hamstring inflexibility. If I put 38s on over, I think they're like whatever they are, I will be more aerodynamic.
Pretty much. It's pretty simple game. But where the problems come, where how you ride them. So if you're suddenly sticking your elbows out, then it'll be slower.
Okay.
But then this is the homework you got to do. You can't just aero test and expect it to, I'm aero now. You know, you have to then focusly train that technique of how you ride, why you ride. if you go narrow on the bars, it's going to change the handling. It may be better, it may be worse, but it's going to change it. So then if suddenly you're not able to corner and keep up in a bunch as well as you were, that will be slower. But then that means you then need to put more effort into focusing about it. Of, shit, there's a problem now. Like, how can I bridge that gap? But if we're always like stuck in this like cycle of like, oh, my cornering will be bad, you'll never untap those improvements.
You mean, like when Jan Willem van Schip had the crazy bars, and then people were saying, you literally can't ride those in a road race. There's no way you can corner. But it is possible.
Yeah, I think it is possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dangerous. And I know like a lot of people will laugh and judge about like, oh, you couldn't do that, yada, yada, yada. But like, it's possible. You can train it. You can train anything. Yeah. Especially like, this is where amateurs and pros is different. But like, you're telling me the best bike handlers in the world can't learn to ride slightly narrow handlebars? Like,
yeah, maybe some of them can't, but
yeah, well, this is what I mean. This is a use case example. So if your cornering is then inhibited by going narrower, then you wouldn't do it. Yeah, it's a net loss. You're losing energy.
And so, how would, I guess, you in a professional environment, you want to test something, you go to the track. Mm-hmm. That's like track before wind tunnel. Is that correct? Like, you're always testing on the track when you can, or is it because the wind tunnel is much more expensive?
I think it's not that they're like better or worse.
Yeah, what are the differences? Sorry, maybe go back a step.
You imagine you have CFD. How the process will go is CFD, wind tunnel, track. These are basically your tools that you have available.
And CFD for people at home is
computational fluid dynamics.
Okay, and that's what, just computer modeling of the position.
Put a CAD file into a computer, blow some imaginary air over it, see how it flows.
Okay.
So it's the easiest, quickest to do because you don't have to make anything.
Yeah.
There's obviously the costs involved of developing the software, but there's a lot of good platforms out there. That's probably what you would use as your like initial development phase if you wanted to experiment with different frame shapes or just positions. You can manipulate a virtual rider within a CFD and see how that performs, and that might limit you down from 10,000 options down to 10.
Yeah.
And then maybe you take those 10 to the wind tunnel or to the track. You can, in the wind tunnel, you could use non-rideable pieces, if you will, so that you can be a lot more flexible there. But generally, like there's no better or one isn't better or worse. They all have limitations. But the key is just to understand what those limitations are. And I think this again is the big problem that's happening now in that the mass like availability of aero testing means that like there's tools out there that are dog shit. Like maybe we don't say that word. But it's if you've got 3% error coming from your testing tools, then suddenly you can't repeatably test anything greater than less than 3%.
Yeah, right.
So then it's you're testing, but is the test actually a good quality? No. And then all these errors stack up. If you're doing like measuring your atmospherics, there's a couple of percent there, your power meter percent there, your sensor percent there, and it's in the day it kind of makes it pointless. But this is again understanding why you're testing it and where you're going to use. So what answer do you want? What's the best way to find that answer? Is it wind tunnel? Is it track? And I think we prefer the track just because of, but particularly riding on stuff. Like, I mean, I would always go to wind tunnel for like things like skin suits clothing as like a confirmation, because then you can do your sweeps, speed sweeps, turbulent sweeps. You can understand a lot more from that you can't get on a track. But like physically riding the bike, I don't think you can replicate that as well as you can on a track in that controlled environment. And obviously there's limitations there. So it's like, we can't ride the track. If you've got a world tour climber, maybe they're not very good at riding the velodrome. Cool. But then let's go back to our 5-year plan. We want you to be a GC guy in 5 years' time. You're going to have to learn to get better on your time trial bike. So we need to invest year 1 and 2. Maybe the data quality won't be good, but by the time we get to 3, 4, 5, we can start improving it. It's not, it's not black and white. This test didn't work because I didn't get better and the data was bad. Well, did you learn through the test? Which is always the limitations that people come up with. It's, realizing the error testing into the real world. It's not a smooth process.
How then, say someone does fork out a bit of cash, they go and do track test or wind tunnel test, how do they then you've spoken already about the importance of actually training in a position. How do they know it's working? Then when they go, I mean, how do you even know it's working? You can't eye test it when you're riding with them.
You can use your speedo.
So just
you get to A to B faster. It's worked.
So just do basic like 1970s testing of your local route and just ride it many, many, many times and adjust for the wind.
Yeah, but this is all. It's ultimately, it's not going to be black and white of whether it's faster or not. Like if you had a car come past you and suddenly you're going to get a load of thrust off the back of that, then you know,
like Ganna in the World's TT. Yeah, what do you get? How much do you reckon he gained in the last K and a half?
Oh, it's definitely.
It's a little bit.
These things help, eh? You know, I'd be surprised.
Seconds.
How many times, like, this is how many TTs have been solved if you've had like 5 or 6 catches or something in a TT?
Yeah, no.
Which realistically happens in a lot of TTs.
Especially for the second TT or the later TT in a Grand Tour when the big boys are way out of GC. You know, the deeper in GC, the better for them because, like, they can catch literally on a 45K or 40K, 35K TT, 5 people.
Yeah.
And that's what could be 3, 4, 5 seconds a pop almost. So
adds up. It's nice. I don't know how you optimize around that.
Make sure you don't try and stay a little bit in GC. Like really, really get out of GC so you're catching the sprinters who are going around on a road bike is what I would do.
Or you could maybe like have like the whole. I don't know if you had like one. If you didn't have a GC team, say you just have one TT rider that you want to win one TT. Then just have like all of your team's riders like back to back, and be like, right.
Yeah, but the team wouldn't have enough cars.
You get neutral, still there.
You're still the car behind.
Yeah,
true.
I mean, I think if you're fixing it to this level, you'd probably sort a few extra car rentals now. Get some stickers, pop it on.
Someone will do it. But yeah, so that would just be testing your local route then.
Yeah, it's just having a consistent route that you consistently go over.
Okay.
And again, this is why track.
But that's a really good advice because that's accessible to everybody. Everyone's got their local like route, or even in Brisbane, we've got the Murray Crit Track. It's a circle. Nunda Dome. It's a circle. So like, okay, there'll be wind sometimes, but that's people probably have I don't know. In England, you could go to your local velodrome, or
we got 10-mile time trials every day of the week now. England's the land of the time trial.
True. So, okay, well, that's really good. So you would just test it and just see how you're improving at it.
I think that there's a leap of faith as well. I believe that you need to do. Like, I think.
Well, what do you mean? Like, believe I will go faster if I do this and can mentally commit to it.
It's like the number of things we do that we don't actually know the outcome of. I think if you just go down that process of error testing, you may not see a set in stone answer, but you will get better if you stick to it, keep going. Like, there's enough examples in the world of how we go, you know, like road race speeds are getting faster. Why is that?
Yeah.
You know, like, again, like the individual pursuit times on the track, every single year they get faster.
Yeah, crazy yesterday.
You just track what guys are doing. Every year it gets better. And it's not because, you know, they're pushing more power. And it's only when, like, because we're human beings, we can't see these small little improvements. But I'm sure if you put the videos of Jonathan Milan doing a 416 IP versus the 358 or whatever, 359 he did the other day, you just played them side by side, you'd see a different athlete.
So it's like the iPhone. Like, you don't know the difference between the last generation. It's the same. But then when you compare the iPhone or to 10 generations ago, you're like, holy shit, it's a different device. Or actually, FIFA's good. Actually, no, FIFA's not a good example. It hasn't changed for like,
so
hasn't changed for like 7 years. But you could tell when you compare FIFA 10 to FIFA 18, you're like, oh, wow, there's like huge difference. But year to year, you never notice the difference. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's like accessible to people. But would you recommend, say they're going to make a change, or someone makes a change, or say you got a pro athlete making a change, you're gonna change something. You're gonna go 130 mil stem, for example. You're gonna go narrow bars. Are you gonna do that snap change? It's on the bike, and you're just gonna ride that every day, or are you gonna like gradually introduce it with some like on-offs to allow the body to adapt to it, or is it just a hard change?
It depends what it is. I mean, you float over all the bike fit history, injuries, all this sort of stuff. If we're assuming a perfectly healthy athlete, then I would just snap change it.
Okay.
And make sure there's the position you put them in is a smart position. You're not doing anything stupid and radical.
Yeah.
But it's just time, because it'll take time to get over that feeling, because we know what normal feels like.
Yeah.
But it's like to learn the new position, and then you can maybe go back and see if you wanted to. Like, I'm sure you'd go back and you'd ride it and you'd be like, oh, you know, like if I put 35 bars on you for a month, then you put you back on your 45s, whatever, like gravel bars you've got on at the moment, you know, like, so you'd go back and you'd be like, yeah, I ain't riding these.
Yeah, it's like driving a truck.
Yeah. And there's definitely a little bit of like, I don't want to say this deception, but you know, like there's a few brands where like you get a new bike comes out and the bars are slightly different. Maybe it's like 2 centimeters narrow on the hoods or something. The guys pop on the bikes and they're like, new bike feels really good. It's just because the bars are 2 centimeters narrow.
Right.
And they just haven't been told it, and they can't feel it sometimes. Like, that's definitely one. But it's with the narrow bars, it's always like a one, but it's, you have to correct the length as well. You can't just go narrower. Imagine the geometry of it. If you go narrower, you go shorter.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes, like, I think in the past why the handling's been bad when people have done it. If you just slam in 4 centimeters, you've got to go at least maybe 3.5 longer to keep that same contact patch.
Okay. And yeah, I didn't think of that myself either, but that makes sense, because I'm like 173 centimeters, and I feel like the bars are a little bit wide. Some people have said before, they're like, you're driving a truck. Like, but it's, how do you, and that's an interesting question, especially because you got a psychology background. Like, I would like to go a little bit faster as well. I would say I'm borderline enthusiast amateur, maybe a little bit below that. But my psychology for change is not, I don't know, I just am comfortable with what I'm doing. I've got the bike, it's there, like, why? And I know there's these things that would make me, and it's not just in cycling, it's in everyday life. Like, sometimes you just do things for ages, your whole life, you get habituated to it, and then you suddenly do change it, or someone says, why are you doing that? And then you do it, and you're like, wow, I could have saved myself 10 minutes every day with this very simple thing. How do you get yourself to be in a change mindset, or to change?
It's a bit deep, that, for a Sunday evening.
But it's part of it. It's part of it, because people will listen. They're like, I'm not going to ride those bars, even though.
But this is like, it's either got to be what the benefits got to be that good enough for you, make you want to put the effort in, or the downsides got to be bad enough to make you want to put the effort in. So either you want to win that much, or you don't want to get dropped by your mates that much. You know, if you're comfortable in the middle, you're never gonna change it. But if you're happy being comfortable, and it's, you know, if you rode your bike on your own all the time, it wouldn't matter. But if suddenly all your mates were dropping you every single day of the week, you'd be like, I got to do something about this, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's human nature. I think within the amateur side, I think it's maybe more so than the pros.
I've seen some of the TT setups in those English TTs, on the British TTs, on the Aeros. I'm like, they look better than half the World Tour GC riders.
Yeah, but then this is the difference. The World Tour guys aren't just time trial riders.
They're pretty good at other stuff.
There's a lot of like other demands that come in. You know, you've got to have done 5 days, 5 stages. You've got to do 5 road stages, do a TT, do another 5 road stages. You know, you suddenly put yourself into a little ball and you injure your hips and you're useless for the next 3 days. Then it's just not going to work, eh?
And you've probably come up against, I guess, when you were in the 4 of you hub environment, hub. I'm used to saying Hubart bike. When you're in that environment, everyone's open to change. That's the whole concept behind the team, really. It's like radical, doing things differently. But then now you've been working in professional cycling. How have you encountered like resistance? How do you work through that? Is it just explaining to people this will make you faster? I'm assuming, have you encountered resistance to, not just aero, but optimization?
Yeah, 100%. But then that's more of a cultural thing. That's like you say, it goes back to why do people make the change? Maybe if you're fearful of making change because you're happy with where you are and this has worked for the last 10 years, why would I make a change? That's the enemy of of the future. But this is where it comes in terms of like how you run a team, how all the staff members interact and work together to improve everyone. If a rider or a cohort is allowed to have that mentality, then you will stagnate. Like it's year after year, you have to not just improve a little bit. You have to. If you stay the same, you'll go backwards.
Yeah.
And I think that's evident with a lot of riders. With the rate of change for some people, like I think Pog's TTs this year. I mean, I've just been doing some analysis of all these riders' TTs, and like he did a pretty shit year last year. TT, but this year he's gone and he's made pretty drastic changes to his position. He's clearly doing something different there.
So you think his Comblow TT in the mountain TT last year was not that good?
It like you can get one-off examples, but like
you mean across the board he was way better this year?
Yeah, exactly. He's made a big change in multiple avenues, I imagine.
Yeah,
it's difficult to know what happens under the hood, but the results have stepped up, and he's put work in to do that. Yeah, and it goes back to how much time are you willing to put into it? Like because you've only got so many coins, you got to throw them in whichever buckets you think is going to make you the fastest. And like 100%, like our belief is that if you focus on that technical performance side, that will make you better on a time trial bike. It'll make you better on a road bike. It's all just like a general philosophy, and you see this a lot with like the junior kids. Where they're like, maybe they're like super dialed on the time trial bike, but then you see them on the road bike and they're also super dialed. It's not like they've suddenly just switched that off.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you could give me like 10 examples of guys that, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you can give me examples of guys that are, they go start to finish of the stage and they're 0.3, 0.4 watts kilo less. Like all the stuff we know about Grand Tours and, we've only got this much bucket of energy to use. If you can knock off 0.3 here, that's something you can use later on.
Yeah. Well, we see it in loads of different riders, like, and there's a subjective feeling, and you can see it in classics as well, because classics are very, very difficult to analyze because there's no watts per kilo data, there's no timing, there's no time checkpoints with like in a time trial and in a classic. Like, how does Christophe Laporte get to the base of the Outer Clermont? How does he do that? We're doing maybe 50 watts less than this guy, and then Moritz has done another 75 watts less than the other guy. How does Moritz? I looked at his Poggio watts in the year he won, and then Tratnik's watts as well, and Moritz watts were like on the Poggio, I don't know, like 400 watts, 420 watts. I was like, what the fuck? Like, how is he? And he's like not 60 kilos. He's like 70 kilo rider, 72 kilos. But I don't really understand how he did it. That's the thing. I don't really
sure his power meters are right. Because this is the first point. It's
again,
if you don't have good, reliable, precise, consistent tools, then you can't make.
I'm pretty sure it's right. Nor within the ballpark, because then when there's steep climbs, he's really not that good at climbing. So like, there isn't this, it's not just under reading and then he actually climbs really well on a 5K 10% climb. He can, but maybe, Merida, well, they use Shimano. Yeah. Poggio be in the big ring though, so it's okay, right? The luring of the steep climb might not be. I mean,
depends how much he pushes on the right side of the crank, I think is.
But it's hard. I can see, let's say it is right. I can see that, but I don't.
You can't though. This is the problem with the tools. You say you've shot over the assumption that let's say it's right.
Yeah, okay.
That could be anything from 10% to 5, 4, 3% out. And then how do you put your resources in understanding? We go back to how do you know if it's worked? If you suddenly ridden your time trials with a power meter that's, I don't know, 5 watts under, I'm more aero now. I'm going the same speed for less power. But is it signal or is it real?
And so, how do you deal with it?
Stopwatch.
That's the only way. I kind of be like results then.
Go do track worlds every year. Do an IP. See if you get more aero.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, I guess you could do Poggio. Well, that's the thing. You only get one shot at the Poggio every year in the bunch. So it's in road cycling. It's really hard, and in classics as well, to understand. Like you said,
how do swimmers do this? So like,
but they don't have efficiency
because we can measure But we talk about like technique at the start.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like start technique or, I don't know, stroke efficiency or whatever. But it's just because we can measure it. This is the problem with power meters and cycling. We have data available. Doesn't mean that it's good data.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's suddenly if all power meters went away, maybe that would open up avenues to work. You don't feel like you have to have that number in front of you to prove that you've progressed. Whereas, like swimmers aren't doing that, are they? They're still going to work consistently on their technique. They're going to do it. It's,
Are they getting quicker? Is all they care about.
Yeah, exactly. That's all that matters.
Well, that's what I had the conversation with. It was an interesting conversation with, they had a data analyst at NL and swimming. And I was like, how do you measure the force contribution between arms and legs? And he's like, we don't. They don't measure power in any sense. Now, maybe it would be useful because also like they're saying, yeah, we tell the athletes to do 80-20 arms, legs contribution. I was like, yeah, but how? How do they do that without measuring it? But still, they do video like of the starts. They're underwater and just over and over showing how they enter the water, and then they use the stopwatch to be like, when you enter the water at this angle, you were the quickest. So just like do that over, like try to repeat that.
Yeah. I mean, cycling's a basic sport at the end of the day. It's you don't. If you go to say cornering, you go to the top of the climb, start, press your stopwatch, go. What time did you get to the bottom of the climb? Did you go faster? Have you improved? Yes, no.
Yeah.
Like these things all add up. Did you have to sprint out of every corner, or could you smoothly rev away?
And do you think, or I guess, will your future be more in looking at peloton dynamics? Like, is that something you're interested in understanding that better? Like you just mentioned, sprinting out of every corner. Like I feel like you and Dan, and not just yourselves, but other teams, like Aero is not a secret anymore. Like I'm pretty sure.
We're kind of bored of Aero.
Yeah,
Aero,
I'm pretty sure
completed.
Aero's kind of like, yeah, I'm pretty sure people know what Aero is. Like people listening to this, like there's been many interviews with yourself and Dan and others about, not other people popularize it as well, but what do you think is like the next frontier? Is it cornering? Is it peloton dynamics? Is that
cornering, braking?
Okay.
Tires. That's where I put my time, money, resources. That's where we are putting our time, money, resources. Yeah. Like in the 100% in the future, you'll be able to have like a Formula One style plot of here's your power, here's where you braked. You imagine you had your whole squad into a corner. You could see when they applied the brakes, when they released the brakes. It would open up. And
what?
End of the stage.
The cost of these group sets now, and they don't give you any data about your braking.
Mm-hmm. Well, the mountain bikers have a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
If you look at the dynamics that they have, the like cross country and downhill guys, they have much more of it because it's much more important for them.
Yeah.
And it's also a smaller world as well, so that you can put the resources in a smaller group of people.
Yeah.
Like 100,000 cyclists, but for sure that's where it'll be in the future. You'll have like a post stage. You'll see your analysis of these were your watts per kilo, and this is the energy you lost braking, and it'll be massive. And the first thing on that is you'll be like, oh well, how do we do this? It'll open up this can of worms because years and years we've been like, so and so is bad in the bunch, so and so is good in the bunch. But hopefully this is when it starts opening up. It goes back to our big bucket of coins. We'll start putting more energy into doing it. It won't just be a one-off cornering clinic on a training camp. It'll be a consistent part of cycling in your training flow.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that is really where a lot of subjective commentary comes, and in every team, because no one's really measuring it, at least to my knowledge of, he's a good bike handler, he's a bad bike handler, he's efficient, he's not efficient. And you can be like, all right, their normalized power was close to their average power at the end of the stage, or in these sections, etc., they had lower average power. But like you said, if the other person might have the body conformity that they're naturally more aerodynamic, but they brake a shitload more than the other person, and it nets out and they look the same efficiency, but actually the other person's peloton skills are way worse. But yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. Well, I just thought it was immeasurable. I hadn't really thought.
There's things on the market already. You can put a strain gauge in a disc rotor.
Yeah.
Measures the force, measures when you're braking or not. How hard? How long for?
Well, if I put that on my bike down,
we'll need like a big SIM card to record the data, right?
Down Arcless is exactly like your disc brakes are going to overheat if you continue like this. And so that was sort of one of my final questions. Where do you see yourself going? Where do you see Aero going? And technical performance.
We've done this whole little thing, and it's not just Aero. Aero's dead. Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, we got started this Red Bull journey, so we can see where this goes. I think it's very much want to make camp here and see what we can do. What the future is. I mean, if you listen to the introduction at the start, I've jumped around a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And if anyone's I'm keen to see what people's feedback is and what they think. I guess whether people will just go out and buy a pair of Aero socks and say that other stuff sounds way too difficult, which is probably what I would do. Or whether, especially if you're doing flat races or TTs, I think it's the biggest takeaway I've got from this is that just stopwatch is fine because you're thinking with a long-term view. So like if you do enough runs over 2 years or 3 years, and okay, power meter might be overreading, underreading. Let's say it's not. You will see changes if you actually train in it. So take a long-term view of optimizing your position on the bike and how you're riding the bike and what you're wearing on the bike, and use a stopwatch, which I think is a really nice message because I thought we were going to have this conversation, and you were not. I didn't think you were going to say it, but I thought you'd be like, listen, it's all right for me, and for when I go with Primoz Roglic, we got a budget to make him quicker, and we can go do a wind tunnel and a track test whenever we like. We can work with Spesh to build equipment specifically for him, maybe. And I'll be like, that's great. But for the normal person, that's not really attainable. But to hear stopwatch and
well, I mean,
that is very simplistic.
Who's your target market? You know, like you could spend an infinite amount of money, like you say. That is if you want to individualize one rider across a squad, it's all about modularity. The more different pieces you can test, the more you can go. You know, you see like extensions and setups and bikes where it's a fixed one piece. Well, congratulations, guys! You know, cannot aero test, cannot learn anymore. Whereas the more things you can test and individualize, and even from a basic one of like take specialized, it's like who do you develop around? Do you develop around because there's going to be a base development person or like rider, mannequin, whoever you're going to do, that person that you test on the kit will work best on him. Yeah. You know, it may also work best on other people, but different shapes, sizes. This is more into the pros and this is Dan's capability of development side. It's, that's where you can make the big gains for that one guy that's going to win you the race. But from an amateur point of view, copy and paste works really well. Watch works really well. I mean, even like at the highest level of sport, we use climbs and we test ourselves on a climb. It's watts per kilo plus its speed. Just because at the end of the day you've got to go fast. But the problem is that, like I say, all the way through this, we're at this point of you talk to a lot of like the Formula One engineers that have like worked in Formula One 20, 30 years ago that are now in cycling for whatever reason, and like we're in the stage where we just started bolting wings on. Okay, like we're like this worked, eh? We go fast, and then you see what's happened in Formula One through those years, and then it's like this is the way it's going, but it requires development. We're on iPhone 1 at the moment, and we need.
Okay, that's where you see where we are in terms of optimization.
100%. We're very basic.
Okay.
Very, very basic at the moment.
So we're like almost maxed out on physiology and maybe even nutrition. I think definitely when you compare to other sports, like when I look at what the NFL, like some of their teams like nutritional programs are, I'm like, that's unbelievable. These are billion-dollar franchises. Mm-hmm. And even, some of them have changed and gotten better. So you think we're not maxed out, but pretty good there, but going fast specifically still. Well, I guess your boat is talent scouting development, no? Yeah.
Tell me, like, can you make this 18-year-old kid can you improve his fresh power curve? And how much by?
Depends on a lot of factors. His training history, his physical development.
Okay, so you say he's trained well, he's eaten well, all that's done well. Can you improve it from 18 to 28? It's all done in his fatigue state. You can improve, but that one-off physiological performance.
The one-off fresh data, it doesn't improve as much as I initially thought. No, yeah, exactly. The one-off fresh data, especially the anaerobic data, really is kind of fixed.
But then, twist that around. You've then got a 25-year-old guy who's just not improving, fresh or fatigued.
Yeah,
you're doing, which won't be the case, but you're doing everything perfectly.
Yeah.
Then, at what stage?
And he's at 1,000 training hours a year, and if you give him another 10%, he's going to get sick or injured.
Yeah, exactly. So then this is when you start having this your bins of money. Like, how many sessions, physiological effort interval sessions, can we start pulling from? Let's take that session and let's put it in a technique session.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to a go-kart track and sending it around. You're still doing a physiological stimulus, but then you're also adding a skill element.
Yeah.
So it's not 5 by 5 minutes. It's 5 by 5 laps.
5 by on a go-kart track.
Well, anything
in a go-kart
on a bike.
On a bike.
Or round a car park or something like this. It's you've only got so much time in the day. Where are you going to put your resources?
Yeah.
This is where it goes.
So if you're and that happens. A lot of guys, that is what happens when people, to the majority of riders, I would say, you look at the pool of the U23s, and then some of them just stop. Most of them just stop improving, or at least don't improve at the rate at which they're going to go further or get picked up. And
those guys are the exciting ones, I think. They're the ones that will lead the way, because they're the ones that, I think, again, there's examples in other sports where I was, say, if you're eighth best in the world, okay, this is if you train the same way you've ever trained, you're going to come 8th. Maybe you'll come 5th. But then let's try this, and maybe we come 3rd, And if it doesn't work, you're going to come 12th or 13th, It's a calculated risk, and you'll never do this with your top tier guys, because the risk reward's not there. You'll modulate slightly off path, but this is where in the future, having a development team will open up these opportunities, because you've got guys that are willing to do it. Because if they don't, say you've got 2 years of your 2 year sign on your contract, you're not going to make it. You're the 5th best guy in your under 23 team. You're not going up to the big boys.
Yeah.
Let's try this, and this. Let's go. Let's see what happens.
And you think, the team should almost be leading in that, and the team should almost, and it's what the NBA teams do with the G League. The NBA teams in the G League their G League team, which is their Devo team, for want of a better word, they'll trial a new offense. They'll trial, okay, how far can we push shooting 3-point shots as a percentage of our total shots? Can we go to 50%? What would happen if we just literally try to shoot every shot from 3? What would happen? They trial that there. And that's an interesting point, because it's almost the opposite mentality with the development teams. You're we need to be safe and nurture them and do everything really conventionally to not break them or whatever, because they're 19 or 20, whereas actually most of the guys on the Devo teams are not going to make it to World Tour, and most of the guys on Conti teams probably won't make it to World Tour, and that's the only way they can make it, because if they were physiological freaks, you probably would have seen it by already. So the only way they can make it is doing something radically different.
This is where it comes to what will the what I see in 5 years. It's again, Red Bull's wonderful. We've got a junior, we've got on 23, we've got the World Tour team now. We have these things in place, and it's just a case of getting the ball rolling, really.
Yeah. And it's the perverse thing in cycling is that's almost happened. The person who almost did that the most was Pogacar, the best rider in the world, because he lost 2 Tours de France in a row. That gave him the impetus to ride shorter cranks or do whatever, heat training, use the core body temp sensor, change coaches, XYZ. And Remco was the person who, you see a whole host of, now you watch Belgian U23 World Championship, it's just a bunch of mini Remcos now. But when he started riding, I was like, not only does he have the power, but then he has the position as well. And it's actually there's not actually as many Taco van der Horns as there should be, who wins a lot of races for who he is and won the other day. So yeah, that's
maximizing your capacity.
Yeah, maximize how fast you can go and without just thinking about your watts.
Yeah. But then you gave like two nice examples. You went back to like, how do we make these changes? If you got one which was this was shit, I didn't like it, I've got to make change, and the other one was I want to win this, you know. He's not had that big downer. You know, it's you end up in the same place, and this is.
But there's gonna be no one more motivated than a 20-year-old who's, if you have the conversation with them, like, listen, you're probably not, at the moment you're not on our list for getting a pro contract next year, and you say we would like you to trial using this different setup, and in every race, even when we do Tour of Alsace, you're going to use an Aero bike on every stage, including the uphill finish. So they're going to be more open to do it than a guy who's like.
The key to all these conversations is, one, it's the emotional intelligence that the staff have around it. How well is it communicated? How well is the team's vision and direction that we're going to go in? Because it can't just be you go up and whisper, you know, it needs to be like, this is the way we feel we will win Tour de France in 2030. Like, these are the processes that need to be in place. And I hate talking about all that sort of stuff because it's very corporate and I don't think it works. You've got to focus on winning tomorrow. But like, you know, this is, you have the vision of where you want to go.
Yeah.
And then you communicate and it's culturally accepted within the group. And then you have to have good people that say it. You can't just, you know, fuck people around.
Yeah.
And like, you have to know when you recommend something that it's, you know, it's got a good evidence basis. You know, like, we've done the testing. This is what we believe. This is the data. You've got to be open, honest, get the buy-in from the guys. Like, if you just rock up, if he wakes up in the morning, gets off the bus and there's something different on his bike, or his training is different to everybody else's, it's not going to work. You have to involve these guys in the long-term process.
And why is that? Because they won't train in the position, or if you actually, like, you believe in like a placebo response, if you believe something will make you go faster, you kind of will go faster.
Yeah, 100%. If you don't have the buy-in, it's not going to work. You know, it's like, and again, development teams and where it will go. If you suddenly have this culture of
they're used to something new being at the next training camp. In fact, at every training camp, they're expecting we're going to get something new is going to be thrown at us.
Yeah. It's because you've got to be coachable.
Yeah.
You know, even like, you know, like today when I was like, I can try this. You know, that you accepted it. You listened to the first fucking corners. You were like, dickhead, what does this guy know? But then, you know,
I was just like, I shouldn't bin it.
Then you're like, I'm fucking 100 meters back. But, you know, then you're like, if you're open to doing it, and in cycling, people aren't open to doing it because there isn't that history of, like in swimming, like where you start your video analysis, it's just not there. And these old timers, you won't shift them. The young kids coming up, and if you see it, like how many times in multiple teams, if you try something new with one or two riders,
everyone wants to do it then when they see them win something.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, exactly, when someone goes to, and even if they didn't win because of it, if someone wins by like a minute solo and then from a breakaway or whatever, and then they wore some special Aero socks for the first time or different helmet, everyone on the team be like, I got to give me that, because it's like, well, actually probably would have won anyway with the normal stuff, but yeah, you're right. That is how, I guess, it's normal human nature. But yeah, I think being adaptable, and that's something I also struggle with, because I'm like, why should I bother? Like with my descending, and that's a part of this conversation. But it's like, why should I bother really trying to work on it? But then it's like, you give me one cue, and all of a sudden I feel much more comfortable, even if it's the same speed. Like, why not try and do that?
You're safer, more happy, and even from like an amateur point of view, we talk about all this. Like, I think go pay someone to spend an afternoon to teach you how to corner.
Yeah,
you'll exponentially improve your time on a bike. Be more balanced, more comfy. Like, if you like, fundamentally, people are just amateurs, and I think their bike fits are set up well for them to actually corner well, to be comfortable.
Why do you say that?
There's too much pressure on your arms. Generally, like, people just bodge your bike fits. Like, if you did the weight distribution front to rear on the bike, I just don't think it's good, because we focus on what can put power out on turbo, indoors, rather than the handling side. But if you know, there's a bunch of pros, there's companies out there, you know, just it's put time and effort into yourself, invest in yourself, and it will help, because otherwise you do need somebody that can give you pointers, and it may not be the right pointers. Like, I think you talk to 10 DSs, you'll get 10 different ways to corner.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter as long as you have one way that you approach and you like skill step it up. You're done. Get confident.
Well, I think that's plenty to digest. Thanks a lot, Jonny, for coming on LRCP to talk about technical performance. And it's been really insightful. I've learned a lot myself. I hope everyone has. Make sure to give Jonny a big congrats or support on Instagram or X, because I'm sure he'll be I don't know, you a big story poster?
It's mostly just views of Andorra, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe we'll just show some cows of Andorra, but I'll be really keen to see how he and Dan go at Red Bull. So it's a really exciting opportunity. So I'm happy for you guys, and I'm really keen to see how it pushes the sport forward.
Yeah, hopefully don't fuck it up, eh?